guys, I recently watched a bunch of videos on parenting because I'm looking to level up my parenting game. I just love being a dad and I wouldn't want to be the reason why my kids don't have the best chance in life. So here we are. Becky Kennedy takes the stage. She's telling us that she's got the single most important parenting strategy. I would love to know what it is to make my life more simple, more effective, and more happy as a dad, as a partner. Let's find out what she's got to say. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. Oh, I love that intro.
All right, quick poll. Raise your hand if you have a relationship in your life that's meaningful to you.
What a great question.
Okay, I assumed, but always good to check our assumptions. I'm saying this because while I'll be focusing today on a parent-child relationship, please know that everything I'm talking about is applicable to any meaningful relationship. So with that in mind, let's jump in. So it's Sunday night. I'm in my kitchen. I just finished cooking dinner for my family, and I am on edge. I'm exhausted. I haven't been sleeping well. I'm anxious about the upcoming work week. I'm overwhelmed by all the items on my unfinished to-do list. And then my son walks into the kitchen. He looks at the table and whines, "Chicken again? Disgusting." And that's it. I snap. I look at him and I yell, "What is wrong with you? Can you be grateful for one thing in your life?" And things get worse from there. He screams, "I hate you." He runs out of the room and he slams his bedroom door. And now my self-loathing session begins as I say to myself, what is wrong with me? I've messed up my kid forever. Well, if you're a parent, you've probably felt that pain.
Oh my God, straight out of the gate, she's highlighting one of the most repeated cycles I've experienced as a dad. It doesn't have to be dinner. It can be anything that happens every single day on a routine basis. There is nothing worse than putting so much effort into making something happen for your kids only for them to reject it and complain about it. It makes us feel like we're a failure, that we couldn't provide the level of certainty in our actions for our kids that they somehow know that they need. This happens more frequently than I think we would allude to. In our house, food is a massive component of our day. Mainly because of myself. I'm a chef. I come from an ethnic background that has a diverse, really rich food culture. And I love to inject that into everyday living. And it does hurt when I hear the little one say that she's bored or she's full because she doesn't want to continue eating what it is. But I circumnavigate that with the understanding for the purpose and the intention that I'm providing this food. Yes, there's nutrition involved. Yes, there's sustenance involved. And also there's a routine that I'm trying to instill into these little children's lives, that they eat healthy meals, that they eat a good portion of food, which is difficult to decipher all on its own, let alone what to cook, how to cook it, and when to cook it. But it's a challenge that I feel a lot of parents could really use some help with. For me, what I do is I make sure that I know before I'm going to cook what I'm going to cook. I am lucky because as a chef, I am able to know what's in the fridge, what I can do with these things in the fridge. We're talking cooking methods, how much of each ingredient's in there, how long it'll take to cook. These things come as second nature to me. But what for those people who really aren't necessarily enjoying cooking or don't really have the greatest amount of time to cook, what they could really benefit from knowing is knowing what you're going to do in advance. Having a few staple ingredients that you know you can produce relatively quickly, produce a good amount of flavor. And I can share with you some ingredients that when you combine them, they make for a really easy, simple recipe that works every single time. It doesn't have to be lasagna. It doesn't have to be spag bol. It doesn't have to be steamed rice and chicken or broccoli. It can be just as simple as that, but it can taste like a gourmet home-cooked meal. And I feel her pain because I come home sometimes from 10, 11 hours of cooking food for other people, and the last thing I'm really wanting or expecting is to be met with a lack of gratitude for cooking even further. Because one of the pillars of being a dad that I find extremely important to myself is that I am to provide sustenance and nutrition through our food. And then, of course, together we all share in that moment when we sit at the table or share a meal together wherever we happen to be. We ritualize it. It's that level of creativity which I believe Becky would love us to have, so that those mundane things become more interesting.
For me, it comes with an extra layer of shame. I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist, and my specialty is helping people become better parents. And yet, this is true as well. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. Mistakes and struggles, they come with the job, but no one tells us what to do next. Do we just move on? Kind of just pretend the whole thing never happened? Or if I say something, what are the words? Well, for years, as a clinical psychologist in private practice, I saw client after client struggle with this question. And now, as the creator of the parenting content and community platform Good Inside, I see millions of parents around the globe struggle with this issue. All parents yell. No one knows what to do next. Well, I'm determined to fill this gap. After all, there's almost nothing within our interpersonal relationships that can have as much impact as repair. Whenever a parent asks me, what one parenting strategy should I focus on? I always say the same thing: get good at repair. So what is repair? Repair is the act of going back to a moment of disconnection, taking responsibility for your behavior, and acknowledging the impact it had on another. And I want to differentiate a repair from an apology, because when an apology often looks to shut a conversation down. Hey, I'm sorry I yelled. Can we move on now? A good repair opens one up. And if you think about what it means to get good at repair, there's so...
Wow. You can tell that this is a really well put together talk with lots of thoughtfulness and intention. The shame and guilt that comes with making a mistake like that doesn't come to everyone. I, for one, have never felt that shame or guilt for when I was yelled at or shouted at or put in my place. That apology would have been absolutely welcomed, because it would have made me feel listened to, noticed, heard. And that's the submissive nature of the upbringing that I have had. That's been replicated in my adulthood as well, in other relationships, whether they be personal or professional. But that's not to say that what Becky is saying is incorrect. I'm just showing a slight nuance to what she's saying, because she's right. Apologies are often used as a way to get out of the repair process. And this repair process, for me, when it came to being a parent who would dictate to the children, this is what's going to happen, and to be met with extreme rebellion at times, was a real wake-up call, because I realized that the pattern of telling the child what to do all of the time, as opposed to working with them in collaboration to find the right way, at least for the moment, to get the job done together, as well as educate, inspire, and instill good values. It cannot come from that broken methodology of just dictating. When you dictate, if you've got someone who's submissive, they won't learn, clearly because they'll just do the thing that they're being told. It's automatic. It's not really inspired or instilled. It's not long lasting. It may be quick and it may get the job done in the moment, but it just leaves more work to be done of the exact same nature in the future. And when it comes to the dinner analogy with the not chicken again, guaranteed it's going to happen, if not the next day, sometime near into the future. That's not a cycle any parent wants. I, for one, am a bit time poor, as well as many other parents, because there's lots of stress. There's sporting events, there's school events, there's all kinds of dramas that we've got to address throughout the day. And the last thing we want is friction of the same kind day after day after day. So I love what she's talking about here with the repair. Let's see what she's got to say.
So much baked in realism and hope and possibility. Repair assumes there's been a rupture. So to repair, you have to mess up or fall short of someone else's expectations. Which means the next time I snap at my kid or my husband or my work colleague, instead of berating myself like I did that night in the kitchen, I try to remind myself I'm focusing on getting good at repair. Step 1 is rupture. Check that off. I crushed it.
Yes, we absolutely do crush the rupture phase of this conflict and the conflict resolution. And she's right. At the very beginning, Becky said that this applies to all types of relationships. And I can think in my head a myriad of different scenarios which didn't pan out the greatest. I might have said something I didn't mean and created a scenario that I didn't have to, could have prevented it by keeping my mouth shut, causing disrepair to a scenario that could have been repaired. And of course, the very last thing as the conversation with myself, which is the shame and guilt cycle that she's talking about. Absolutely spot on the money here.
Step 2 is repair. I can do this. I'm actually right on track. So let's get back to my example. I'm in the kitchen, my son is in his room. Well, what will happen if I don't repair? That's really important to understand and helps us make a decision about what to do next.
Brilliant again. It sounds logical because it comes out of someone's mouth who's extremely educated, tested and tried this method over and over with herself, with her clients, and it's extremely rehearsed. How many of us ask the question, what could I have done better? Or what if I don't move into the repair phase, as Becky coins it? What do most people, do you think, do when they create a conflict? Do you think they run towards it thinking, hey, I need to solve this and let's get back together and form all kinds of loving, nurturing strategies? Or do you think that they try and sweep it under the carpet and pretend that it doesn't even exist? Yep, I definitely have done the latter, but I really want to get more into the former on every single day life. So the first step, as Becky says it here, is to admit the rupture. What is the rupture? It can be any form of problem that I had an influence over or that I had an impact on. It doesn't have to be catastrophic or life-threatening. It can be small and minuscule. It's these little white lies that we tell us that say, oh yeah, I did this because, that person did that first. And I get it. Maybe it wasn't your intention to go over the line and say the wrong thing, but the outcome will speak volumes as to whether or not you could have changed the course of the action. I see it a lot in my professional team where there's a dispute between who's got to do what. And clearly there's a hierarchy. And, we would like to think that the members of the higher portion of the hierarchy have the team's best interests at heart, but often they're being pressured in different ways that dismiss their ability to think clearly and rationalize the decision-making process. Often they're not even taught how the decision-making process in our minds actually works and how to bring a broad spectrum, wide band, overarching view to making decisions. And these conflicts are never easy. Of course, at times, you have to interject in a forceful, powerful kind of manner. It's not necessarily that fun, but it has to be done. And you can take that rupture and then you can move into repair and think, okay, well, I've still got to have the power and control over the scenario here whilst being protective of the outcome itself. So when children run, my child runs towards the street to try and get over the road. I scream at her, Evelyn, stop! That works really well. There's no animosity, there's no aggravation, there's no hurt whatsoever. However, if I use that same thing when Evelyn's trying to be loving, maybe I'm working on a project on my phone and then she tries to steal my phone falls to the floor and it breaks. If I say, Evelyn, stop, guaranteed she's gonna feel that anger, she's gonna feel that hurt and that pain. I can't bring my phone back. I have to go to the shop and get it repaired. But what I can do instead is I can say, Evelyn, come give us a cuddle. Because she knows already she's made a mistake by the phone dropping on the floor. These kids are super smart. They know when they've done wrong a lot of the time. They're not doing it out of spite. They're beautiful young children, vibrant. Yeah, guaranteed. Some kids do things on purpose. They think it's fun, but it's actually quite bad to do. And it's part of the parenting journey. It's not a reflection on how well or poor you are as a parent. It's not a reflection on how well or poor they are as a child. It's just part of growing up, that they'll touch things that you aren't supposed to touch. They'll say things they aren't supposed to say. They'll go places they're not supposed to go. And they'll do things that they're not supposed to do. This is part of the deal. It's that nurturing process around connection and bonding between child and myself that I feel is really important.
Well, here are the facts. My son is alone, overwhelmed, and in a state of distress because, let's face it, his mom just became scary mom. And now he has to figure out a way to get back to feeling safe and secure. And if I don't go help him do that through making a repair, he has to rely on one of the only coping mechanisms he has at his own disposal: self-blame. Self-blame sounds like this: something's wrong with me. I'm unlovable. I make bad things happen. Ronald Fairburn may have said it best when he wrote that for kids, it is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil. In other words, it's actually adaptive for a child to internalize badness and fault, because at least then they can hold on to the idea that their parents and the world around them is safe and good. And while self-blame works for us in childhood, we all know it works against.
Interesting. I can tell you how I was adaptive. I learned to be secretive. I didn't intentionally hide what was going on in my head from other people. I just never bothered to make a point of sharing what was going on in my head. This led to being completely misunderstood so much of the time, and having different thoughts and feelings about the same topic that everyone has a common narrative is excruciating ostracizing, which is big words for I felt super lonely even though I was near other people. It's only when I learned to be self-sufficient and knowing that other people around me will most likely follow the hoi polloi, because that's how humans tend to be, whilst I've got contradictory or rebellious or contrarian ideas, I can still have those ideas and I can find other people who have similar ideas. It's kind of like finding your own people, right? Not everyone listens to TED Talks. Not everyone's interested in parenting. Not everyone is interested in sports, but yet there are cohorts of people that do have these interests and they tend to gather together because like attracts like. That was demoralizing for me to know that I had to operate in full, I hope this is the real word, ostracization whilst doing things that I loved, hoping and looking and wishing for the approval of the ones that I loved the most. The ones I admired the most. This is not a degradation or a criticism upon anyone. It's just the facts. It's just the way that it went. Upon moving forward into adulthood, what I'd really like for my children, for everyone's children, is that they know who their parents are, that their parents know who their child are. And that comes through the repair phase. The repair phase isn't just, in my opinion, and this is the genius of what she's coming up with here. It's not just about repair. It's actually about building connection. So you can build connection on something that you have no interest in with your child. They like blocks, you like sandpit. Well, you can still show an interest in their interest despite not having an interest at all. Where I saw this a lot was parents who clearly are not interested in their in their kids' school band performance before school. I was absolutely abhorred to see the amount of parents on their phones while their child are performing in front of them. It broke my heart. And I wasn't even there for my own child. I was there with my family to see my stepdaughter. And it doesn't take a lot to have that commitment, to see value and beauty in someone who is related to you in a different way than the common narrative. It's lovely to see your child's nuances change and grow. Yes, they're not professional at the child age in those things, in those pursuits, but it's so great to know that you've got an impact, you've got an influence upon their growth. And you do have to wait. It's a 10, 15, 20-year difference between having the child and seeing it come into fruition in a truly remarkable way. Wouldn't it be just awesome if you did all of those little chores, all of those little nuances, did all the little spats, and then it culminated into something beautiful? Well, here's your opportunity. Hit the repair phase.
Against us in adulthood. Something's wrong with me. I make bad things happen. I'm unlovable. These are the core fears of so many adults. But really, we see here, they are actually the childhood stories we wrote when we were left alone following distressing events that went unrepaired. Plus, adults with self-blame are vulnerable to depression, anxiety, deep feelings of worthlessness, none of which we want for our kids. And we can do better. And it doesn't mean we have to be perfect. When you repair, you go further than removing a child's story of self-blame. You get to add in all the elements that were missing in the first place. Safety, connection, coherence, love, goodness. It's as if you're saying to a child, I will not let this chapter of your life end in self-blame. Yes, this chapter will still contain the event of yelling, but I can ensure this chapter has a different ending, and therefore a different title and theme and lesson learned. We know that memory is original events combined with every other time you've remembered that event. This is why therapy is helpful, right? When you remember painful experiences from your past within a safer and more connected relationship, the event remains, but your story of the event, it changes. And
Absolutely critical here. The patterns we instill in our kids end up being patterns that they still have as adults, which means if they choose to have children of their own, they're going to use the patterns that they've learned in their parenting. One thing that I've seen, and I could be extrapolating this out beyond what Becky's talking about here, but I think it's important to note there are so many different metrics, one of which is alcoholism and divorce, and another one is divorce, that if you have an alcoholic parent, a divorced parent or parents, the likelihood of you encountering these challenges increases dramatically. So I'm here and I'm making cool videos which are fun, entertaining, and I'm also wanting to highlight why I'm doing it. It's because I don't want those problems for my kids. I grew up with it. I became it. Now, I don't want that for my kids. Both my partner and I, we come from previous marriages. There are blended families in the mix here. For none of those children do I want that travesty. I want them to understand that marriage or long-term partnership is a gift. It's a blessing. It's a challenge. It's a really hard challenge. Some might argue it's even harder than paying off your mortgage. Okay, sorry. What I'm trying to say is that the challenges that we create for ourselves in the what I'm seeing in society is divorce problems, health crises, financial crises, other crises of health which are a little bit more morbid, like suicide, especially in the male cohorts. And I don't like it. I want young men or boys and girls to grow up into strong, confident men and women. I want them to raise beautiful families that view the world as an opportunity. Yes, with difficulty, but not to be destitute in their mind thinking, well, this is my life and I can't get any better. To know in their heart that they have more worth than the cards that they were dealt. To know that they could accrue the skills, to accrue the competence and the confidence to go out and achieve their targets. In a society which is so driven by consumerism and cheap dopamine, I'd like them to understand that the long game is super important. When I was married the first time, it was under a different pretense. I was extremely submissive because I had very little self-worth. I had very little self-value. I medicated frequently because I didn't really know what I was doing. I felt completely out of place. Some 15, 20 years later, I feel more in place and more who I am than ever before, especially because of my kids, especially because of my partner, because I see the light in their eyes and it gives me light inside. It's not to say that I wouldn't have made this leap in this journey of faith regardless, but it is to say that it catalyzed the message that I would like to portray to you today, which is, if you've got a family, whether it's you, your brothers or sisters, your mums or dads, or you've got children of your own, isn't that worth preserving? Isn't that worth taking time to learn new skills and build resilience around communicating with each other? Isn't it great if you value these things to look at oneself, to reflect and say, hey, I created the rupture. Maybe I too can create the repair. Being vulnerable in that space is difficult because maybe the other people involved aren't ready to go down that journey with you and they want to shoot you down for even trying. Had that so many times. Even now, it's still like that. People just don't share each other's ideals in the same time frame a lot of the time. You feel like you're convincing someone to come along with this journey for you because you know best, you've done your research, here's the proof. But if they're not ready, they're not ready. So repair within as well. Force the rupture, create the repair, create the harmony in oneself, portray it out to the world, and you do kind of have to hope for the best. You can't make things happen exactly as you want it. There are just too many variables to control, and there are too many forces outside one's control that they can influence all at the same time, effectively and efficiently. This, I hope, is a wake-up call to those dads, especially because I'm a dad. I can't really speak to the reference of the mindset of the mum as much outside of the lens that I have of having watched mums raise kids and having my own mum. But I can speak to what it's like to be a dad and see relationships fracture and dissolve. It is fucked up. I'm not saying that every relationship you get into is going to be the perfect one. It's going to lead you down the track of success and that you're going to have the greatest and strongest bonds of relationships possible. But I am saying is if you take these ideas that Becky Kennedy is putting forth today and you're in the right relationship and there may be disrepair or there may be rupture, but there's certainly the opportunity to repair, please go ahead and repair it. Don't quit unless you really have to. Or you know you've made a mistake that you need to change course, change trajectory. I'm really fortunate now to have a partner who I can talk to. I was speaking to a friend of mine. He outlined the scenarios within his own marriage, and I thought, wow, that is bananas. It's felt so foreign to me. But then I looked back about a decade and I saw that wasn't foreign to me at all. It was exactly what I was going through, just in a different way. There was control, there was submissiveness, and it felt like a prison. That's not how we were born to live. I'm not saying we need to sell all our possessions, travel the globe, and live like a nomad in order to be free. It's the mental prison that I'm alluding to. It's because we see the rupture. We know there's a problem. We know there's something not right. But moving from that rupture into repair is something we can all do by just admitting that there's something wrong, And not shooting the other person down or not being shot down makes the world of difference. So if you're in a relationship where things have stagnated a little bit, or if you're finding it difficult to communicate with your kids because they've gotten to those teenage years and you're no longer important to them, you are important. It's just that the patterns of development that you've exuded during their formation years, their formative years, have created the relationship that you now have. It wasn't you all on your own. It was all of the influences around them, the school environment, your professional life, the home environment, all of the influences on the internet. It's not cool to be hanging around with your parent, all that kind of concept that we see in all kinds of different social media. Well, you can change that today because that was the rupture. And moving forward into the repair phase where you ask the question, whether you show the interest. And I can see why people backlash because they're trying to defend their position. They're trying to defend their opinion, their identity. Their values are linked to their identity. No, Dad, I can't do this because boom, 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 whatever it is. But is that the real reason? I doubt it. It's just the reason they give you to get them off your back, to remove that pressure that's inside their mind. It's not even real. It's just inside their mind. Because you're concerned, you voice it in a way that's forceful or assertive, but it's perceived as an attack. That's the rupture. So we need to move forward into the nurture, the repair stage. How do we do that? You're going to get shot down first time. Second time you try, maybe shot down again, but go back, regroup, get your pen and paper out. It's so powerful what you can bring out of this pen into the page, and you can reflect, what could I have done better? What do I want? My relationship with my kids. It might take years, but will it be worth it? Will you be happier? Will you know you've done your duty, the one that you set out for yourself when you had these children? Will you get to your deathbed and you'll look back and you're like, I'm super happy I made the decision to go into the pain of the past, to move out of the rupture and into the repair, and to try and have a fulfilling relationship with these children and my partner. Not to mention the amount of money that it'll save you, legal fees, divorce fees, the heartache that comes with separation. That's a whole nother story, by the way. But as Becky says, these principles run into every single relationship. So I think it's useful to take a broad spectrum approach to think, what areas of my life am I miscommunicating? What areas of my life am I communicating really powerfully? And to know the difference. To know when I'm strong at communicating well, when I need to use empathy, how to use empathy when I'm getting pushed back for a directive that I'm bringing out, when it comes to those chicken dinners, so to speak. Fascinating stuff, right? But boil it down into those 3, 4, 5 self-created principles using Becky's guidance as a template.
And then you change. With repair, we effectively change the past. So let's write a better story. Let's learn how to repair. Step 1, repair with yourself. That's right. I mean, you can't offer compassion or groundedness or understanding to someone else before you access those qualities.
Correct.
Within yourself. Self-repair means separating your identity, who you are, from your behavior, what you did. For me, it means telling myself 2 things are true. I'm not proud of my latest behavior, and my latest behavior doesn't define me.
I like to recant what happened and look for where I went wrong, look for where I went well, look for what I'd like it to have actually gone, and to see where I can actually improve. That's first and foremost. Then secondly, I'll take that reflection forward, and if I can repair the interpersonal relationship challenges, I'll go ahead and do it. There's been troubles with different people where they got power, they were my friends, then they got a promotion, and then they didn't like to have to do the things that they used to do, and they became power hungry. I don't stand for this kind of rubbish. I don't tolerate it. And I have to think much more clearly whether or not that's going to be a thing. if that's going to be a thing that I'm willing to tolerate beyond that point. The answer is always no. Purely because who wants to go into a day at work and then fight every single day over the same thing, all because someone got an ego boost with a promotion, and for some reason they let it go to their head.
Even as I struggle on the outside, I remain good inside. I can then start to see that I'm a good parent, identity, who was having a hard time, behavior, and no, this doesn't let me off the hook. This is precisely what leaves me on the hook for change. Because now that I've replaced my spiral with groundedness, I can actually use my energy toward thinking about what I want to do differently the next time. Oh, and I can now use my energy to go repair with my son.
Isn't that brilliant? She's honest about the reality that's going on inside of mine. She's thinking about what I need to do in the real world in order to get things back on track and move things forward and level them up to a higher echelon to become effective in the ways that she finds important. It's beautiful stuff.
Step 2, repair with your child. There's no exact formula. I often think about 3 elements. Name what happened, take responsibility, state what you would do differently the next time. It could come together like this. Hey, I keep thinking about what happened the other night in the kitchen. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sure that felt scary, and it wasn't your fault. I'm working on staying calm, even when I'm frustrated. A 15-second intervention can have a lifelong impact. I've replaced my child's story of self-blame with a story of self-trust and safety and connection. I mean, what a massive upgrade. And to give a little more clarity around how to repair, I want to share a few examples of what I call not repair, which are things that come more naturally to most of us, definitely me included.
Oh man, gloves are off. Here we go. Let's hope that we can measure up to the standard that she set. But I believe she's put it really simply. Identify the rupture, admit the rupture, own up to the rupture, move into the repair with ourselves, move into the repair with the child, and do it within 15 seconds using those 3 solid frameworks. Amazing. Here we go. She's gonna put us to the sword with this one. Here we go.
Hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you in the kitchen. But if you wouldn't have complained about dinner, it wouldn't have happened. Been there, okay? Or, you really need to be grateful for things in your life, like a home-cooked meal. Then you won't get yelled at. Not only do these interventions fail at the goal of reconnection, they also insinuate that your child caused your reaction, which simply isn't true and isn't a model of emotion regulation we want to pass on to the next generation.
That's the kind of feedback that I believe led to me shutting that mouth up as a kid. Don't want to hear what I got to say? I'm not going to share what I got to say. But when I did share, damn, was it brutal? And it was not well received. Big time rupture.
So let's say we've all resisted the "it was your fault anyway" not repairs, and have instead prioritized a repair that allows us to reconnect. What might the impact be? What might that look like in adulthood? My adult child won't spiral in self-blame when they make a mistake and won't take on blame for someone else's mistake. My adult child will know how to take responsibility for their behavior because you've modeled how to take responsibility for yours. Repairing with a child today sets the stage for these critical adult relationship patterns. Plus, it gets better. Now that I've reconnected with my son, I can do something really impactful. I can teach him a skill he didn't have in the first place, which is how kids actually change their behavior. So maybe the next day I say, you're not always gonna like what I make for dinner. Instead of saying, that's disgusting, I wonder if you could say, not my favorite. Now I'm teaching him how to regulate his understandable disappointment and communicate effectively and respectfully with another person. That never would have happened if instead I had been blaming him for my reaction. So here's the point where
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I actually don't see things in that same light. My daughter frequently tells me food is disgusting. Firstly, she doesn't know how it tastes. She's not tasted it. She is going based on the perception of how she thinks it's going to taste. And to me, it seems very much like I'm being sold an idea that in some ways is slightly manipulative, but in a more innocent fashion. She's not deliberately telling me that it's disgusting to hurt my feelings, push me into a submissive state of mind, and give her chocolate. I do believe, however, that there might be something else on her personal menu that she's wanting more. And I've seen this time and time again. I'll come home from work, it's a little bit late, she's starting to get a little tired, she'll ask for food. I say, all right, I've got some chicken and rice, or I've got some beef, or whatever I've got made. And then she says no. And then I say, well, what do you want? So many times. Very little waiting. I want an apple, Daddy. I'm like, huh. I wonder why she didn't just say, can I please have an apple? Was it because at some point in time in the past, I've said no, or I've ruptured, and she's gone, all right, I need to do this a different way. This is all intrinsic, right? It's all under the radar, subconscious. And those intrinsic patterns have come out as opposed to just asking directly, I would like some apple, because she thinks, well, if I ask for apple, I'm not going to get it. It comes out in a different way, which runs through a sequence of little bits and pieces that eventually leads to her saying, I would like an apple. And then I start to think, damn, a little bit of rupture action here. Maybe I need a repair. Maybe the apple's not such a bad thing, despite the fact that I would prefer to have some protein before bed rather than sugar. P.S. I'm not against sugar. It's just she gets a little bit more energetic after she eats sugar before bed, and I'd like her to calm down and go to sleep. The other thing is that I don't believe talking down reality or down truth is the right way. So if they think it's disgusting, I'm not telling Evelyn to be more polite to me. That might be necessary to perfect strangers, friends and associates and things like that in a more social environment, because being brash, bold, and harsher are things that are frowned on socially. If she thinks something is really disgusting, I don't want her to dumb that down for me. I want her to be real and honest about what she truly thinks, because it gives me the opportunity to see inside her mind, to see what she's actually thinking and feeling. I'm like, well, okay, I might get offended because she said it's disgusting, but I'd be more offended if she hid who she really was from me. Do you get what I'm saying? I really believe that it's good to be honest. Yes, we overstep, we let our hindbrain overtake and say stuff that we didn't mean it and then think, oh God, that was a mistake. But I don't think we should go, oh, I'm going to avoid risking offending someone who I'm supposed to be transparent and honest with, all for the sake of being polite or politically correct. If you think it's disgusting, build the relationship that is so honest, truthful, and transparent, where you can say what you think without people getting offended, because that's the nurture and the nature of the relationship that you've created. If Evelyn tells me something is disgusting, I don't get offended. Why? Because I understand her language. I paid attention to it. I've taken the time to understand the way that she likes to vocalize things. She's 4 years old, by the way, so words are new to her, of course. But if she doesn't want to eat something, she's not coming out of the gate reacting and saying, it's disgusting. She'll literally tell me, I don't want to eat that. It's disgusting comes into place when I've maybe escalated a little bit, where I say, you've got to eat your dinner if you want a chocolate, or well, everyone else has eaten, it's your turn too. Hey, it's disgusting. It's her surefire way of getting out of having to eat that thing because she got eyes on another prize. That's how I view things. I could be wrong. What do you guys think?
you might have a lingering concern. Maybe you're thinking, I have a feeling my kid's older than your kid. I think it's too late. Or, I've done a lot worse than you did in the kitchen. Maybe it's too late. Well, I mean this. If you have only one takeaway from this talk, please let this be it. It is not too late. It is never too late. How do I know? Well, imagine right after this, you get a call from one of your parents. And if neither of your parents are alive, imagine finding and opening a letter you hadn't seen till that moment. Okay, walk through this with me. Here's the call. Hey, I know this sounds out of the blue, but I've been thinking a lot about your childhood. And I think there were a lot of moments that felt really bad to you. And you were right to feel that way. Those moments weren't your fault. They were times when I was struggling, and if I could have gone back, I would have stepped aside. I would have calmed myself down and then found you to help you with whatever you were struggling with. I'm sorry. And if you're ever willing to talk to me about any of those moments, I'll listen. I won't listen to have a rebuttal. I'll listen to understand. I love you.
Yeah, wow. She knows the process big time. Definitely gone through this, not to the depth that I would have liked to. Forgiveness is a really good one for that. Reflection is a really good one for that. Being able to look back and go, hey, we're just human beings doing human things. It's amazing. But I think my takeaway from her talking about this is don't wait. It's not too late. You might have waited, but now's the time. Go for it, create that repair. She says it over and over. It makes perfect sense to me. Repair.
I don't know many adults who don't have a fairly visceral reaction to that exercise. I often hear, why am I crying? Or, listen, that wouldn't change everything, but it might change some things. Well, I definitely do not special in math, but here's something I know with certainty. If you have a child, that child is younger than you are. Always true. The story of their life is shorter and even more amenable to editing. So if that imagined exercise had an impact on you, imagine the impact an actual repair will have on your child. See, I told you, it's never too late. Thank you.
That was absolutely bananas. I've watched that a couple of times, mainly because it was just so inspiring to know that we have options as adults and parents, and that's really freeing in itself. So go back, watch again, take notes, see what you can bring out of that interview and into your life. For me, I just feel great thinking about the opportunity that I have to impact my child's life, knowing that I'm going to make mistakes, that I'm not perfect, that I will create ruptures, and that I have the opportunity to repair the issues that I learned to give my kids through my childhood. And I would like it to be perfect. I would love it to be as beautiful as possible, but I have to be absolutely reserved in that manner because we're human. We do things that we don't want to do. It's a reaction rather than a proaction, and we've got to forgive ourselves for that. All right, have a great evening. Much love to you guys.